Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Ryan's Trains. Today is going to be an amazing review. Right behind me, we got this amazing Lionel Legacy Milwaukee Road. First gen Lionel Legacy, in fact. And this is going to be an amazing video, and we're going to do it all right here at Ryan's Trains. So here's the history of this Milwaukee Road S3 Northern of the 261. The Milwaukee Road S3 was a class of 10 484 Northern steam locomotives built by Alco in 1944. It operated by the Milwaukee Road until the mid 1950s. The locomotive saw pulling service was freight and passenger throughout the Milwaukee Road. Today, only two S3s survive today. The 261, which we have here, the Milwaukee Road 265, which is displayed at the Illinois Railroad Museum in Union, Illinois. And how only 10 locomotives were built? Well, it's because the Milwaukee Road had acquired the first four EMD FT diesel locomotive set in October 1941, and it had managed to get in second in July 1943. When it wanted more in 1944, it was only allowed by six in the Wartime Production Board. Instead, the wartime production allowed them to get 10 484 Northern classes, which were delivered in July and September of 1944, which were classified as an S3 for the Milwaukee Road. Which means as an S3 Northern, Milwaukee Road actually designed these engines by giving them classes. The first S1 484 Northern was different than you see the S3. So what I mean is, if you look up a picture of the S1, and I'll show a picture of it right now. Yeah, so that's what it looks like with the headlight on top of the locomotive, and it didn't have a Mars light. But that was a weird engine, and those S1s came with roller bearing caps on the tender and underneath the engine as well. But later on, they required the S2 locomotives, which were kind of the same as the S3. They're a little bit different as the S3s, but they're different in size. They're like, I don't know how to say it, but they almost looked like an S3, but they weren't. And finally, the final batch was the S3 locomotives, and they served a short time on the Milwaukee Road. And the 261 was later sent to not be scrapped, but it was sent to Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is up here where I lived, to the National Railroad Museum. And the National Railroad Museum's first ever locomotive that they ever gotten was the Milwaukee Road 261. When the 261 sat there for kind of over a little bit of days or months, a preservation group came along and leased the locomotive from the National Railroad Museum and restored the locomotive to operating conditions. The Milwaukee Road 261 will later become with the Friends of the 261. It still runs today in Minnesota, only frequent trips they do. But during the 90s and the 80s, the engine would visit a bunch of places like Steamtown, the New River Gorge, and it would come up to Green Bay, Wisconsin, and it will sit there by the Chicago Northwestern Depot. There's some videos on YouTube you can find, really amazing. This engine holds a sentimental value to me. When I was a kid, I always wanted a Milwaukee Road S3 Northern, and it's just amazing to have an engine that is just always wanted as a kid. Very amazing. And when I was a kid, when I first saw one at a train show in I think 2009, it was this engine right here. And this engine was pulling the Lionel aluminum passenger cars. And I think I was 10 years old, or I think maybe around that time. I was just hooked to this engine running on the layout. It was amazing, and I always wanted one. And it's just, I'm happy to say I have one. It's almost like it's unsurreal, like how this one is sitting here on my layout today. and it's just amazing. But don't worry, they only cost me a kidney and a lung and my wallet. But don't worry, my wallet's fine. Right wallet. Oh. Ghidorah, think fast! Huh? Don't worry, he's fine. Let's get back on to the 261. So I'll be telling you viewers about why this is called a 484 Northern type steam engine. I know the other viewers of this channel already know what a 484 Northern is, but for newcomers and a newcomer's a steam locomotive, I'll tell you what this means. So you got 4 trailing wheels that leads in the front of the engine, 8 driving wheels, and 4 trailing wheels at the back of the engine that supports the firebox. So they designed and classified by counting all the wheels, and the wheel arrangement is a 484 Northern. The 484 Northerns were used to whisk high-speed passenger trains and heavy freight trains. Northerns reported to heat a 2-story house. That's how big these engines were. And they were beautiful design engines, and they became really famous with other railroads. Other railroads didn't call them the Northern type, like the Milwaukee Road, they called them S3s. The New York Central called them Niagaras, and the Norfolk and Western called them the Jays, and the Union Pacific called them FEF Northerns. So other railroads had their own names or nicknames for these engines. And the reason why they're called Northerns because the first railroad to ever purchase these engines was the Northern Pacific, and they had the rights to name this engine after their railroad. So that was a cool history about this engine. There's more history on this engine. You go on Wikipedia or Google or Eric's Trains because he does a lot more review in detail about the 484 Northerns, in which he does an amazing job at it. I highly check out his video. But now let's go on to the next part of the video. So I'll be giving you a unique history on the Mars light on the 261. The Mars light was a single safety light used in the United States and built by the Mars Light Company for the railroads and locomotives and firefighters, apparently. The Mars light was used in variety of means caused of the light to oscillate, which means oscillate. It means that the light will rotate in a finger 8 or rotate in a circle and sometimes switch back, like counterclockwising. The Mars light was developed by Jerry Kenley, and a Chicago firefighter who realized the oscillating lamp would benefit to firefighters and railroads. He performed an operating test with the Chicago Northwestern in 1936. The Mars light became apparently on locomotives later than the 1930s. The TRI company announced their acquisition of Mars light signal light on January 2023 in 1991. The manufacturers of many traditional Mars lights under the TRI company would since be updated to the Mars 888 traffic breaker energy. In effect, it will be replaced by LEDs earlier in sealed beams by the Hogan's Canal lamp. So these Mars lights were used in a lot of safeties and firefighters as well. So what it means for the railroads for safety, the front headlight will be beaming, like say another train that's coming that's switching into a siding, and let's say that the 261's headlight would be blaring front at a diesel engine's cab, which will blind them. So one safety reason is to have a rotating light, so it will rotate and not blind the other engineers' faces. And it is really useful when the engine's going through town. People will see this red light and know, oh, that's a train coming. But this engine's got 2 whistles on it. One that's the big, more throaty based whistle that is perfect for the 261. The next whistle is a more softer kind that must be like for in the cities, but the air horn. Now I'm be telling you a reason. This model is not based on the Excursion model, even though the Lionel box says the 261 Excursion when it was with Amtrak. This people are saying, oh, the horn was used for Amtrak. Technically, that is not true. Now, here's my reasoning why. The Milwaukee Road, with their S3 Northerns, these Northerns were going at their top speed pulling a freight train or the Hiawatha at top speeds. When the engine's blaring its whistle coming to a crossing, people are not going to hear it because how loud the engine's coming and how fast it is coming. So they would add an air horn on it that was signified as a louder tone, so people down the line would hear an air horn like, oh no, there's a train coming, should not go on the crossing. so I'll wait for the train to go by. So that's what happened. These air horns became popular with the Milwaukee Road. And to back up my reasoning, Milwaukee Road 265, if you look up pictures of her, there's a picture of her on a roundhouse during the days when she was with Milwaukee Road. And if you can look on the front of her boiler on top, she has an air horn equipped. And most of the 10 S3s that were built for the Milwaukee Road, they had air horns equipped. So the 261 would have had an air horn equipped during her days with the Milwaukee Road. But now in excursion service, you rarely ever hear that air horn when she's running. Sometimes they may blow the horn just for fun, or maybe the horn just doesn't work at all and it's just for show on the locomotive. But the air horn on this engine does work, and the Mars Light with this engine. So even though I talked about the history of the Mars Light, but this engine is just so amazing. The Mars Light stays on when the engine is moving, and I just love that. With the red light doing the figure eight, rotating, and it's just amazing. Later on, down in 2010, Lionel would bring back the S3 Northerns with Bluetooth. But the thing is why I don't like those engines. Here's my reasoning. When the engine turns on and starts moving, the Mars light does not come on at all. But when you press the emergency button, that Mars light will come on and blink several times as emergency stop button. That happens during the 844 when you press that and the Mars light comes on blinking emergency red. That is not true what the Mars lights were meant for. Because for me, I love it where the Mars light is just on and rotating, and it just gives the engine more character and more pizzazz to the locomotive. In which why I love this engine so much. So here we're going to be doing the details. Right in the front of the engine just speaks business. Right here you got these handrails on the front for the crews to hold on, 2 foot plates right here, and this amazing streamlined plow, which will come out as a dummy scale coupler. And you can switch that out for a dummy O-gauge coupler that comes in the box to run double heading with this engine. Along the side of the engine is just so much detail. Up above here of the sand cap, you get the controls for the engine and the smoke effect. To quote Optimus Trains on YouTube, he said that this is like the Vision Line engine that never was. Reasons why he says that, in which I agree to him, is that this engine has cylinder steam, which is underneath here of the engine. When you press the button, the steam will shoot out from the engine when the engine's moving. You don't see that a lot on engines these days. You only see them on the Lionel Vision Line engines, and you never see them again. Sometimes with older models, and I just love this. And why it's shooting it out, if you ever see the wet steam being shot out. So the engineer, before he runs the engine, he blows the cylinder clocks, which steam will shoot out and shoot water out. And reasons why, because water gets trapped in there and they shoot it out so the water doesn't stay in there and it'll damage the steam chest inside the engine. Coming along here, inside the engine when you leave it on, there's a cool detail. You can see right here, the gauges are actually lit up inside the engine, and that is a cool detail that Lionel has done. Right here, if you can see, the doors on the side do open up, and this is an all-weathered cab. Reason why it's an all-weather cab because this engine was in the Midwest, and we have lots of snow and changeable weather, so this engine had to keep her crew safe during the weather changes. Right here, we got the nice Milwaukee Road logo. On the back, we got a backup light and electro coupler. And a realistic co-load is on this engine. This engine is really nice, and we're gonna fire it. We're gonna get the engine ready up and set it up, and we're gonna watch the 261 back up to her new Milwaukee Road passenger cars. And she'll be taking a run on the layout, and she'll be switched over to the Milwaukee Road Train Club that is in Milwaukee, and we'll see her run around there, and she'll make a trip back to Lakewood Station and for a stop. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later.
Dispatcher, my call's just about empty. Am I clear? Over.
Yes, you're cleared onto the main. Over.
Roger that. I have a clear signal. Out. You still clear all the way? Over.
Affirmative. All clear ahead. Over.
Copy that. Out. Untie the register book. Out.
Well, thank you guys for joining this amazing video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I really, really recommend you guys finding a 484 Northern. These engines are amazing, and there's a bunch of them in your favorite railroad. You can name it, any kind of them. I highly check it out. If you want a one that finds good sound and good, amazing like sounds and speakers in it, I would check out Lionel, because Lionel, you get more of an option, and they have like a throatier, more bass to these locomotives. It's a really amazing. And honorable mentions, other videos you check out is Optimus Trains, who did his own review on the Milwaukee Road 265, Sid's Trains on the Milwaukee Road 261, and Eric's Trains. Those videos are really awesome, and I hope you check it out. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care and have a good Friday. Stay safe out there.